This week on Supercars Talk, I show off my Armageddon supplies, poison myself with another can of Red Bull, and complain a lot. Seeing as though the Grand Prix has been cancelled, you might have heard about it, and there's my ticket for Sunday. Corporate platform turned 15. That would have been a nice day out, I tell you. I can't share a Coke with Chris. That was the tagline that Chris Pither had when he said we're sponsored by Coke and we're going to beat the Grand Prix with Coke sponsorship and whatever. And he said, come and share a Coke with me. I can't, so I've got this sugar-free Red Bull, and don't know how well you can see that on the screen, but it is actually, there's Jamie Whincup and Shane Van Gisbergen on the car, and there's a picture of one of their ZB Commodores, so I was quite excited about it. It says join the crew. I've got a Red Bull top on, but that's more my Formula 1 top to go with my Formula 1 ticket that I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that now, but anyway, thankfully I didn't have to pay for it, someone did. Anyway, this has got with taurine and it vitalises body and mind. So I've had a lack of coffee today, so I need a bit of vitalisation. Let's see how bad the sugar-free one is. Pretty much what I was expecting. Yeah, bit ordinary, but we'll just sit it there and complain later on when I've got my chest pains from it again. Before I complain too much about this corona thing, we'll get into a bit of the news that happened before the weekend. So Alex Davison got the gig at Team Sydney. Interesting. Very, very interesting. It's his first full-time drive since 2013. If that doesn't ring alarm bells to a team, I don't know what would. Local Legends Beef Jerky is the sponsor of the car. I'm going to have to find out where I can get some of that and give it a burl, I think. And the car is bright. They certainly wanted to know that that car was on track. Bright. Just a little bit of stupidity on my behalf, but I'm wondering if this COVID-19 thing, James Courtney got a bit confused and thought maybe car 19 was the virus one, and that's why he ran away from it. Alex Davison got dumped from essentially his brother's team as a co-driver, and they picked Jack Perkins over him, which, funnily enough, Charlie Shercott replaced Alex Davison with Jack Perkins back in, I assume, 2013. Was probably the year when and Jack got the full-time ride there in that FPR kind of customer car there back in that day. It's going to be interesting. He didn't do too badly on the weekend. I did take note of the results here. Great viewing there. He qualified 20th in both races. Pither was 18th and last, respectively. So 20th isn't as bad. I expected those two cars. Well, I expected Pither to be last in every race, or battling Jack Smith for that last position every race. I'm not knocking Pither at all, or Jack Smith for that matter, but essentially I expected the car to be total junk, and I expected that James Courtney's car was going to be half reasonable. Maybe the car wasn't that bad if for Alex to kind of put it on 20th, or who knows. Probably Grand Prix track takes a bit away from driver and puts a little bit more emphasis on the car setup there. Supposedly the deal's for the rest of the year, so we'll get a big chance to see how bad this whole situation is. After all the mentions of Cam Waters Ubering Shane Van Gisbergen back to the pits in Adelaide, it was actually Hola! That jumped on board a Todd Hazelwood, Todd Hazelwood's car for the Grand Prix. Too bad they didn't get any exposure for it. It was just for the weekend. Yeah, sponsorship on a bad-looking car. That's all I've got to say about that. On the other side of the Brad Jones garage, we had the Dunlop car for Nick Percat again. Once again, did a bloody good job. Too bad we didn't get to see it on the telecast at all. And over at Walkinshaw Andretti United, we had a Brock-inspired paint job for Mostert. It looks better than the mess that we had in Adelaide. Leads me to definitely believe that they had designed the Hazelwood car and slapped together the Mostert paint job to match the Hazelwood one. Now they've spent a little bit of time to put it all together. Still questioning when we're going to see Boost there, although I think it's probably going to be in the third car for James Courtney. So there was a tiny bit of track action on the weekend. Well, technically it wasn't the weekend because it was Thursday. But I got home Thursday night from work, all excited. I watched the 2 qualifying sessions. Didn't bother watching the practice sessions because I figured, well, they're only practice. We've got plenty of other practice and racing and whatnot to watch over the weekend. And deleted the stuff off the recorder. So all I got to see all weekend was the 2 10-minute qualifying sessions, which once again, those qualifying sessions are ridiculous. We either need to use my suggestion of changing the start-finish line to before the pit entry, so that they can get in 2 runs, or maybe extend them to 15 minutes each. I wouldn't even care if maybe they took a few minutes off the practice session or something like that, to maybe get a bit more time in the qualifying, because it seemed a bit ridiculous. I think in the first session there was like 2 minutes left on the clock. No one was running around, and they called, the results came up for the session. The second session was a little bit different because you had Chaz didn't bother going out, and he went out last. The commentators, Mark Scaife, made a big deal about him. Oh, this is a big risk and blah, 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 blah. Okay, Scaife, you've got one shot at it anyway. It doesn't matter if you're doing it, before or after. The only reason you'd have 2 shots would be if you put enough fuel in the car to do 2 runs, which most of them don't want to because they don't want the extra weight. So in the practice session, we saw Macaulay Jones once again had a brake failure. I think just a rear brake failure sent him into the turn 1 wall, 16G impact, and that was his day done and dusted. Wasn't going to partake in the qualifying, which didn't matter so much in the end. The qualifying was pretty much as we predicted. Race 3, we had Van Gisbergen on pole, Whincup second. Will Davison, don't get the 2 Davisons confused. The front of the grid Davison was in 3rd. Scott McLaughlin, not the fastest Mustang, in 4th. And Jaime was the next fastest Mustang in 5th. Good run there from Andre. Fabian was 12th. So I thought this was going to be the weekend where Fabian had his best shot to outscore Scotty, and it wasn't looking good because as well, qualifying for race 4, we had Whincup in 1st, Cam Waters leading the Mustangs in 2nd, Will Davison, the fast Davison, in 3rd, Van Gisbergen in 4th, and McLaughlin rounding out 5. Fabian had moved all the way up to 10th in that qualifying session. So, that's where we're at. Not surprised that, Red Bull were essentially the fastest. McLaughlin was up there. A little bit surprised at how close the Tickford cars were. I expected it to kind of be a top 3 and then the Tickford guys. It didn't quite go like that. And a little bit surprised that good old Fabian was not playing, kind of around with the Tickford boys there. So what happens for the rest of the year? Well, who knows? TCR have come out and said that their first round's going to go ahead. I reckon that's probably because, they're talking about gatherings of 500 people. So I don't think they've got too much to worry about that at TCR event, have they? Funnily enough, they did hold a qualifying session at the Grand Prix. Garth Tander was on pole. There was 22 entries for the TCR race. I knew 8 of the drivers, so I'm not sure if that's just I'm too focused on supercars, and I'm not focused. I'm not sure if these are young blokes coming up or if some of them were international guys from TCR that I just don't know because they're not on my radar. I'm more interested, maybe like F2 and Indy Lights guys, and then obviously Formula 1 and IndyCar guys, and the guys who are doing Super 2 and things like that. TCR is not kind of on my radar. But I thought, and basically of those, the 8 guys that I knew, I mean, you had like, Tander and Michael Caruso, who are guys that, James Moffat as well, not good enough to have a full-time Supercars drive. Supercars co-driver, and then like you had Will Brown and Dylan O'Keefe, who are kind of, Super 2 drivers that are trying to get up into the Supercars category. And there was Chelsea Angelo, who I know as well, basically because there's a lot of coverage on any female who does, and any kind of reasonable results. But yeah, so that's my little bag out of TCR. No fans, so they can still hold their events. As for supercars moving forward, they haven't decided anything yet. New Zealand's got some big restrictions on. If you go to New Zealand now, you've got to do a 14-day quarantine. Whether that's still going on, when the Hampton Downs race is supposed to happen, who knows? I think it's all evolving as we saw on the weekend at work where I got my ticket from. We had guys going on the Friday. We're sat there at 8 o'clock in the morning going, well, it's only McLaren that's affected. Everyone else is kind of going ahead to, they're not going to let spectators in today, to the whole thing's been stopped. So, it's a very evolving thing. Thank God I've got some toilet paper. Don't tell the missus that I've brought it out here. I'll get in trouble. We'll see if she watches the videos and notices. So they're talking. They're going to reschedule this round at some point, possibly. I can't see. It's the Melbourne Grand Prix. That's done and dusted. That's not going to happen at any point this year. We'll see the F1 back in 2021. People are saying, it might be rescheduled, whatever. It's not going to happen. If Supercars does have a round to replace it, Phillip Island, Queensland Raceway, 2 places where we're not racing this year, so you're not doubling up anywhere. And I suppose there is the possibility as well that, we're at a circuit somewhere, say like Winton, instead of having, 2 races over the weekend, maybe we add in a third one somewhere. And then, you're picking up, at the Grand Prix there's 4 100k races. Maybe we do it like that, and maybe on the Saturday or Sunday morning you have a 100k kind of sprint race at a few places like Darwin, Winton, Barbagallo, Sydney, something like that. Maybe not those because they're the super night rounds. But, maybe even have a sprint up Sandown, Newcastle, who knows. But maybe you could pick up, have a little sprint race so instead of having, 2 races over the weekend, you have a third one. And maybe as a novel idea, the first of those 2, we could run them from the order that they qualified in the Grand Prix. Just an idea. If they do end up going down the route of adding in an extra round, I know there's a lot of talk with the F1 calendar where they're talking about shuffling things around and saying it's going to be quite hard adding in rounds towards the end of the year because of the way it is. We're quite lucky in supercars that there is decent gaps between the rounds, and because there's supposed to be Olympics in Tokyo this year, which who knows whether that's going to happen at the moment too, there is a 6-week gap between Darwin and Sydney, so you could quite easily slot in, a Phillip Island and a Queensland Raceway round there. 2 races at each to make up the 4 races that we missed at the Grand Prix. Anyone? Hey, you know, more weekends is better than less, isn't it? So that's basically where it is. Who knows what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. Probably more COVID-19 crap. And whether Ryan Walkinshaw's got a replacement manufacturer for the category. Well, I'll leave that one for this week because I've been going on for a bit. Yeah, it's a sad thing that we, that I didn't get to go to Grand Prix, that we didn't get to watch any racing this weekend. Not going to mention Hamilton and his whinging about the whole thing. Pretty simple. If you were that scared, you could have stayed at home. You know, I don't want to see anyone get sick. At the moment, it feels like it's a bit of an overreaction. Who knows? In a few weeks' time, you know, there might be a reason that, you know, everyone's stocked up on, you know, 300 tonne of toilet paper each and things like that. We just don't know at the moment, so we'll see what happens. Until next time, I'm going to enjoy the rest of this Red Bull, and I'll see you later.
Someone forgive me, it was just the other day.